So today, lesson 34B, volume of prisms. We're going to once again try and get the idea of volume of prisms under control here. So a little bit of background knowledge. In the 6th grade, you learn that to find the volume of a rectangular prism, you would multiply the length, the width, and the height. And the problem here is that some of you think that you just, for volume of anything, you just multiply all the numbers together. That's a big problem because that's not what you do. That only works with a rectangular prism. And so what we have to do is we have to sort of fix this. So how would you find the volume of a shape like this? Well, or maybe like this. Those don't work. And I think the problem is that some of you are still trying this with no matter what the three-dimensional shape is. So we've got to think of a different way of doing this. So to find the volume of prisms, here's what you should be doing. And this is where you need to start filling in things in your notes. We're going to always find the area of the base, whatever that happens to be. And we typically use capital B to represent the area of the base. And we multiply that by how tall the figure is, or the height. And we typically use the word altitude to represent that so we don't confuse, for example, the height of an object with something else. So when we put that together, we have this formula for the volume of any prism. Capital B, and you should be writing that down, times the altitude. What that means is the area of the base times the altitude. The area of the base times how tall the figure is. That's what we should be thinking about when we're finding the volume of any prism. All right. So what defines a base, first of all? Well, if you have a typical rectangular prism, those are the bases. And what happens is the bases, because this is where some people get confused. They're not sure what the base is. The bases are always congruent, and they're always parallel to each other. And that's the thing you have to remember. They're congruent, which means they're the same, and they have to be parallel to each other. So where is the altitude? Well, the altitude in a shape like this is how tall it is. Well, if that's the base and that's the base, then this right here would be how tall it is, or the altitude. And so we're going to do a little bit of work on finding these things right now. So, this shape right here. What could the base be? Anybody have any idea? Yes? It's a triangle. It's a triangle because this shape is congruent to this shape. And they're parallel to each other. And in fact, not only is that the base, but we would call that a triangular prism. The base is a triangle. Where's the altitude? Well, the altitude, if this is the base and that's the base, then that means the altitude is right here. So to find the volume of that, you would find the area of the triangle and multiply it by the altitude. All right, let's continue on here. Where is the base on this one? Or what shape could the base be? Well, yeah, some of you think that's a square. It's hard to tell whether it's a square or a rectangle, but it does kind of look like a square. So this is the base because this and this are congruent to each other, and they're parallel. And then, of course, the altitude would be right there. That's how tall the shape is. So we might call this a square prism or a rectangular prism, depending on what that base is. How about this one right here? Is it a triangle? Yes or no? Yes. All right. Sometimes the base we can think of as a top or a bottom, but sometimes the shapes are lying on their side. So like this and this. These are the base because they are congruent and they're parallel to each other. Now, if that's the case, the altitude would actually be right here. Because once again, it's kind of like thinking about this thing lying on its side. So this is a triangular prism. What shape is the base? Say it, please. Well, okay, so somebody said rectangle. If you think it's a rectangle, show me the other side that is a rectangle that's parallel to that yellow rectangle on the bottom. there aren't any two rectangles in that shape that are parallel to each other. However, you should be able to visualize that there's a triangle here and then there's another one over here. These are the two bases that are parallel and congruent to each other. So this is a triangular prism, and of course this should be the altitude because this thing is lying on its side. What is the base on this one? It's a circle. So in this one, we call this a cylinder. Sometimes it's called a right circular cylinder. But we would have to find the area of the circle and multiply it by the altitude. So this is a base and this is the base because they're parallel and they're congruent. That's the altitude in that. We actually do cylinders next year. And anybody know the name of the shape of the base on this one? Octagon's 8 sides. I don't think that's 8 sides. Hexagon. There we go. So we call this a hexagonal prism. So we would have to find the area of the hexagon and multiply it by how tall it is. So volume of a prism is the area of the base times the altitude. In this, we would find the area of the rectangle and multiply it by the altitude, which is right there. And I know so far we haven't run into a lot of things that are in your notes yet, but I'm just kind of going through this. In a triangular prism, we would find the area of that triangle and multiply it by the altitude. All right, we are now officially at number 1. This is a hexagonal prism. I'm telling you that the area of the base is 40. I would like you to find the volume. So in this, the hexagon is the base. In the first few problems, I am giving you the area of the base. And remember, to find the volume, it is the area of the base times the altitude. The area of the base is 40. The altitude, which remember is just how tall it is 7. And that would be 280. So the volume of the hexagonal prism is 280 units cubed. Sometimes you're given units and sometimes you're not given units. All right. I would like everybody to try number 2. Area of the base times the altitude. That's how we find the volume. The area of the base is 354. The altitude, now this is lying on its side, and sometimes you have to visualize that. So we need to find the area of the trapezoid and multiply it by its altitude. So the volume of the trapezoidal prism is 1,416 units cubed. All right, here's what I want you to do. In 3 and 4, I want you to find the volume of both, but not only that, I want you to do your best to name the shape before you even start. Number 1 was a hexagonal prism. Number 2 was a trapezoidal prism. So name number 3, then find the volume. Name number 4, then find the volume. All right, so we have a pentagon that is the base, so it's a pentagonal prism. That's the name of this shape, and that tells us we need to find the area of the pentagon and multiply it by the altitude. The altitude is 2. This is another shape that's lying on its side, and I'm trying to give you a lot that are lying on its side because those seem to be the bigger issues here. The area of the base is 147. The altitude is 2. We still just have units for units, so the volume of the pentagonal prism is 294 units cubed. Any questions with number 4? All right, I meant number 3. Number 4, the base is a triangle because the triangles are the bases, so this is a triangular prism. We are giving you the area of the base, which is 63. To find the volume of that, it is the area of the base, which is 63 times the altitude. This is another shape lying on its side. The altitude is 8. So the volume of the triangular prism is 504 units cubed. Any questions with 3 or 4. All right, let's go to the back side. Now I'm not giving you the area of the base. You're going to have to find it. So, number 5. Raise your hand if you can tell me the name of that shape. Yeah, and I'm glad you didn't say square prism, because even though that may look like a square as the base, look at the numbers. The base is 10 by 5. Last time I checked, that's not a square. 10 by 5 is a rectangular, so this is a rectangular prism. Find the volume by finding the area of the base and then multiplying it by the altitude, please. And make sure you use the correct units, because now I'm giving you other units on a few of the problems anyway, other than just units. So let's go through number 5. This is a rectangular prism. The base is a rectangle, that's why it's a rectangular prism. The area of the base is 50, because it's a rectangle that's 10 by 5. The altitude of that shape is 7. So the area of the base is 50 times the 7 is 350. So the volume of the rectangular prism is 350 cubic inches, or inches cubed. Everybody now do number 6. All right, so for number 6, we have another rectangular prism. The base is a rectangle that is 6 by 3, so the area of the base is 18. And the altitude is 5, so the volume of the rectangular prism is 90 inches cubed. Everybody now find the volume for number 7. This is a trapezoidal prism. The area of the trapezoid can be found right there, so that would end up being 32. And we multiply that by the altitude, so the volume of the trapezoid is 256 units cubed. Units cubed because we weren't given any units in the problem. Okay? All right, everybody find the volume now to number 7. Or excuse me, that was number 7. Number 8. So this is a trapezoidal prism, which means we have to find the area of the trapezoid and multiply it by the altitude. Notice in every single one of these, I'm highlighting what the base is, and then I'm redrawing it off to the side. So we have a trapezoid over here, where I'm just transferring everything over. It has a base 1 of 6, because of the 6 right there, which happens to be the same thing. It has a height of 3 and a base 2 of 12. When we find the area of that, we utilize the formula for trapezoids, and the altitude here is 9. The trapezoid has an area of, what is that, 18, so that'd be 27. So the area of the trapezoid is actually 27. And we're going to multiply that by the altitude, and that's how we get 243 units cubed. Any questions on number 8? Yes?
How come number 7 was a trapezoid too?
But number 9. Everybody find the volume for number 9. What shape is the base in number 9?
Triangle.
So it's a triangular prism. Since it is a triangular prism, you have to find the area of the triangle and multiply it by the altitude. Here we have a triangular prism. We have to find the area of that triangle that is the base, which in that triangle it has a base of 8 and a height of 3. And we have to remember to multiply the base times the height and divide by 2, because it's like it's half of a parallelogram. And so that would be 12 times 4. Remember, this is 12. 3 times 8 divided by 2. Multiplied by the 4. So the volume of the triangular prism is 48 cubic feet. All right, finish this up with number 10.